So in genetic engineering, at the end of this lesson, hopefully, you learned something about genetic engineering, genetic modified organism or genetically modified organism, what are the good and bad effects of this technology, of this genetically modified organism. So before we define the genetic engineering, I have here a question. So what is the difference between the mice in these two groups? As you can see, there is mice in group A and then in group B. So you're going to observe what is the difference between the mice in these two groups. So in this example, or in this picture, in group A, this one, the left purple hand, the mouse on the left side, this one, is genetically modified so that a gene affecting the hair growth has been knocked out. This one, at the right side, is the normal mouse. And then, at the group B, the right three mice, the middle mouse is a normal mouse. And then, the other two are genetically modified to express enhanced green fluorescent protein. So as you can see, parang glow in the dark, these two, compared to the normal one. So from that illustration or from that picture, I think you have an idea on what is the genetic engineering. So let's define genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is the direct modification of an organism's genomes, which is the list of specific traits or genes stored in the DNA. So when we say genome, a genome is an organism complete set of genetic instruction. So all living things, including us as human, all living things have a unique genome. Diba? We are different from each other. We have different traits. We have specific traits. So changing the genome enables engineers to give desirable properties to different organisms. So how do they change our specific genome to have a desirable traits? So organisms created by genetic engineering are called genetically modified organisms. The difference between the normal organism and the genetically modified organism, in GMO or in genetically modified organism, there are changes in their genome. So for example, the undesirable trait will turn to desirable properties. Ano yung pwedeng genes na i-add mo sa particular organism to have a desirable properties? Something like that. So nothing is impossible in our modern technology. So what is genetically modified organism? Yan. All genetic changes affect the protein synthesis of the organism. When the organism undergo genetic engineering, diba, nagkakaroon ng mutation wherein there is a changes in their genome or the complete sense of genetic instructions. By changing which proteins are produced, genetic engineers can affect the overall traits of the organism. So from the normal organism to the new one, which is yung genetically modified. So genetic modification can be completed by a number of different methods. So there are different methods, but we are only focusing in recombination or yung recombinant DNA. So let us first have a recall about your previous topic in life science. So our human body or our body, the living things, has cell. All living organism has cell. Cell is the basic unit of life, di ba? Cell has many organelles like ribosomes, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, something like that. So, the cell has a nucleus. Inside the nucleus, we have the chromosomes. And then, dun sa chromosomes, andun si DNA. DNA, yun yung pagkakakilanlan natin, di ba? So, inserting new genetic material randomly or in targeted location, yun yung genetically modified organism. Direct replacement of genes recombination, removal of genes, and the mutation of existing genes. So, for example, itong family na to, or itong living organism na to, for example is the mice, has black color. Parang yung balahibo niya is black. So, ang gustong mangyari ng researcher is maging white, from black to white. So, kukuha siya ng traits from other species, for example, sa rabbit. Kukuha siya ng traits dun sa rabbit na kung saan nagbibigay yon ng white color dun sa balahibo, and then pwede niyang i-eject dun sa host organism para doon sa next offspring. So, ang tawag doon is cloning. Nagkakaroon ng new form of organism. Nakadepende kung ano yung desired organism na gusto mong mangyari. So, because of the removal of genes, there is a changes or there is a mutation. So, let us discuss what is the process of recombinant DNA. When we say recombinant DNA, it is the joining together of DNA molecules from two different species that are inserted into a host organism to produce new genetic combination that are of value to science, medicine, agriculture, and industry. So, genetically modified organism may be helpful, pwede ring hindi. Pwede itong may good effects, pwede rin namang may bad effects. So, this topic will only focus on the application of genetically modified organism in our industry, on agriculture, or in science. Diba? Di tayo more on magpo-focus sa technical, more on sa process, ganon. Kasi nasa portal nyo na yon, so pwede nyo siyang mabasa. So, how do recombinant DNA happen? Ayan. So, this is the illustration. The step 1 is the identification and isolation of gene of interest of DNA fragment to be cloned. So, sabi ko nga kanina, there are desired traits na pwede mong magamit or pwedeng maging resulta ng organism mo depende sa gusto mong kalabasan noon. So, you're going to identify and isolate your target gene or yung gene of interest. Where do gene of interest came from? It came from the genomic library. For example, your gene interest is the human insulin. So, yun yung target gene mo. The next one is the insertion of the isolated gene in suitable vector. So, di ba nakapili ka na ng gene, and then you're going to insert the gene of interest to the specific vector. When we say vector, it has the ability to replicate inside the host of which desired genes has integrated for cloning. Some of you are familiar in the word cloning kasi there are movies, science movies, na kung saan meron na dibang cloning. So, siguro meron kayong mga idea. So, this one is the vector. Vector can be bacteriophage, plasmid sa bacteria. This one, so yung parang pa-letter C, is called the restriction enzyme. It is the cut of vectors. It came from the vectors. Again, vectors can be plasmid or bacteriophage. So this one, there is an space. So para po saan yung space na yon? This space is for the target gene. Again, the step 2 state that insertion of the isolated gene to the suitable vector. So you're going to insert the gene of interest to the restriction enzyme. Again, the restriction enzyme is the cut of vectors. So, the enzyme ligase, ayan, seal the target gene and the restriction enzyme. Again, the enzyme ligase seal, yung parang nagbaband, this one, seal the target gene or the gene of interest and the restriction enzyme. When the restriction enzyme and the target gene combine, yun na yung tinatawag na recombinant vectors or recombinant DNA. Diba? Parang joining of two DNA molecules from two different species. So something like that. So from the target gene, sabi nga ang sample ko kanina is human insulin, and then from the plasmid, which is yung vector, bind or combine together, they seal because of enzyme ligase. Ang tawag doon is recombinant vectors. So the next one, the next step is the introduction of the vector into the suitable organism called host transformation. So recombinant DNA or genetic engineering, it only happens in laboratory. Hindi pwedeng na, ay, meron kang recombinant DNA, so you're going to inject it in particular organism. And then, you may see the changes. No, hindi siya ganun ka-easy. Kaya isolate pa siya dun sa laboratory, maybe in test tube, ganyan. So, vector containing target gene, yun nga yung recombinant DNA transformation into host cell. So, i-introduce na siya into host cell. And then, amplification, multiplication, or expression of the introduced gene in the host. So, kung ito yung kung ito yung parang pinaka-parent ng organism, ito yung pinagmulan, you can change the offspring or yung future generation through genetic engineering. You're going to put the target gene to have a desired organism. So, ganun po ang nangyayari sa genetic engineering to have a genetically modified organism. So, the next slide are the example of the genetically modified organism. So, the first one is the GMO bacteria. In most of the research, ethics is the most important. Hindi ka pwedeng mag-undergo ng research na without ethics. Siyempre, there are rules, there are law na pwede mong malabag. So, kailangan, nandun ka pa rin, magko-commit ka pa din sa mga law, parang susundin mo pa rin sila. So, bacteria are the most common GMOs because their simple structure permits easy manipulation of their DNA. So one of the most interesting uses for genetically modified bacteria is the production of hydrocarbons or the plastic and fuels usually only found in fossil fuel. So most of dun sa source of biofuels is yung corn. So the researcher come up to the idea that cyanobacteria can be a production of fuels. Pwede rin pala yon. So how? Cyanobacteria have been modified to produce plastic and fuel as byproducts of photosynthesis. So nothing is impossible in the technology. So with relevant gene integrated in the right place in cyanobacteria genome, we have treated the cells to produce butanol instead of fulfilling their normal function. So makakapag-produce dito ng butanol which is source of fuel. The next one is the engineering plant. Ayan. How might genetic engineering modify plants to solve everyday problems? So what are the common problems that we have encountered in our everyday lives? So for example, the farmers encountered so many pests, insects na nakakasira dun sa crops nila, sa plants. Pwede yon. So ano yung paano nagkaroon ng idea yung mga researcher para gumamit ng GMO para ma-solve yung problem dito. Hindi lang sa Philippines in whole world, ganon. So consider world hunger, weather problems, or insecticide pollution. So in every problem, there is a solution. So the first example in engineering plants or genetically modified crops is the BT corn. Yan. So GMO crop production in the US 2010. One common modified crop is the BT corn. So a gene for the BT bacteria is added so the corn produces a protein that is poisonous to certain insects but not humans. So the species of the BT bacteria and then the species of corn, di ba? Meron na tayong two species. So join together. So what will happen? If you compare the genetically modified corn or the BT corn to the normal one, mas madaling masira yung normal na corn. Because genetically modified corn can produces a protein that is poisonous to certain insects. Good thing is, poisonous siya sa insect pero hindi sa atin. Why? Because some of the country, ganon, their source of food is yung corn. So, hindi nila pwedeng kainin yun kapag genetically modified siya tapos pwede rin silang malason, di ba? So, good thing is insect lang siya. Hindi kasama yung human. So, imbis na lagyan mo pa siya ng pesticide, ganon, this corn can adapt to their environment. The next examples are the banana vaccine. Yan. So, modified virus injected in sapling tree causes the bananas to contain virus protein. So, bananas genetically engineered to carry vaccines could provide developing countries with a cheap way to protect children from life-threatening diseases according to the researchers of the US. So another example is the venomous cabbage. Scorpion genes added to the cabbage. So again, two species, scorpion genes and then the cabbage, prevent insects from eating it. So just like BT corn, no? Parang insect na yung hindi dadapo sa kanila kasi they release poisonous, parang toxic yon sa mga insects. Another examples are the golden rice, which is common nowadays. I know that you are familiar in golden rice because this is common in the Philippines. So if you compare the picture, this one, the genetically modified organism and the normal one. Diba sabi nga, how do you solve the problem that people may encounter nowadays? Diba? Parang ang ganda nito kasi pwede siyang ma-apply in our everyday life. Yan. So, rice modified with daffodil genes to have more beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A. So, as you can see, dun sa golden rice, tsaka sa normal rice, mas maganda yung genetically modified organism compared dun sa normal one. Next, tomatoes modified by the removal of genes responsible for the softening of fruit, meaning the tomatoes spoil more slowly. So if you are the consumer, ano yung pipiliin mo? The GMO or the normal? As you can see in the picture, yung normal, ang pangit na ng texture niya. The normal tomato can spoil easily. Compared to genetically modified organism, tomatoes spoil more slowly. So, mas napapatagal yung lifespan ng isang organism. Yun yung thought dun sa genetic engineering, wherein pwede mong palitan ng desired traits yung sa organism. For example, the best example is yung tomato. So, tomatoes modified by the removal of genes. What specific genes? Because the DNA, meron siyang long strand. Diba? Sa DNA, meron tayong adenine, guanine, something like that. Dun sa strand, diba? Double helix siya. So, what specific traits or ano yung specific strand doon na nakakapagbigay doon sa tomato para po para mas malambot siya, or what is the specific genes that is responsible for the softening of fruit. So through genetic engineering, may genetically modified organism, papalitan yon ng desired traits. Ano yung desired traits na yon? Yung tomatoes or yung traits na pwedeng makapagpabagal nung parang pagkabulok niya. So, from the normal one, which is madaling may spoil, to genetically modified organism. Next one is the corn modified with a bacterial insecticide gene so that it produces insect toxins within itself, protecting it from pest species. Yung example natin kanina about doon sa BT corn. If you compare the normal corn to the genetically modified organism, as you can see to the normal yan, may sira. Kasi more on prone sila sa insect. Compare dito na nagre-release sila ng poisonous toxins para dun sa insect, para hindi na sila lapitan. Next one, other reasons to genetically modify crops. So there are many reasons why they come up to this kind of experiment, di ba? It may be helpful, pwede rin namang hindi. So the first one is the insect resistant, another is the herbicide resistant. Parang hindi na natin masyadong kailangan ng insecticide or herbicide because genetically modified organism can adapt to the environment. Pwede na sila doon pwede na nilang maalis yung mga insects, pwede hindi makadapo sa kanila yung mga insects without the use of insecticide or herbicide. Next is drought resistant, disease resistant, higher yield, faster growth, improved nutrition, longer shelf life. So the idea is, what is the weakness of that specific organism? So once you see the weakness, pwede mo siyang palitan. Ito pala ba, kaya pala nabubulok masyado yung kamatis because of this. So you're going to change the specific genes into the desirable traits para mas mapaganda yung traits. Sa next offspring na yon ha, sa next generation. Next is the engineering animals. So could genetic engineering be used to modify any animals to solve problems? So we have different problems again, aside from plants, dun sa mga crops, farmers, Also, meron din dun sa animal. So, paano nakatulong tong si genetic engineering? The first example is the bioluminescent animals. Okay. So, two species. The first one, the upper left, is a fungus displaying bioluminescence. Plus, yung mouse, what is the result? Diba? As you can see to the normal mice or to the normal mouse, if you compare that to the genetically modified organism, parang ayoko nang matakot sa daga, parang ang cute-cute na ng daga, no? Glow in the dark. So the uses are protein tracking, disease detection using bioluminescent imaging or BLI to identify different types of cell. So, hindi yun kayang gawin ni normal organism lang or ni normal mouse. But, through genetic engineering, genetically modified organism from this fungus displaying bioluminescent plus mouse, yun yung result. Diba? So, it may be helpful. The next one is the fast-growing salmon. Ayun. So, genes from two other fish cause the salmon continually produce growth hormones. So, for example, ito, both fish are 18 months. So, parehas lang naman silang 18 months. So, what is the difference in the farm salmon and the GM salmon or the genetically modified salmon? The length of the farm salmon is 13 inches, while the genetically modified salmon is 24 inches. Both fish are 18 months, while the weight 2.8 pounds and then 6.6 pounds. So, mas malaki yung GM salmon. Why? Or yung genetically salmon, why? Because they produce growth hormones. Diba? Compared to the normal one, kaya niyang lumaki ng 24 inches. Next is the less smelly cows. Modifying bacteria responsible for methane production in cattle results in 25% less flatulent cows. So, kung sa normal cow, 100% yung maamoy natin or yung baho dito, less smelly na siya. Diba? So, mas maganda. The next one is the genetic modified cow, another sa cow. So, transgenic cows carrying two types of casein genes result in 13% more milk protein, a bovine growth hormone used in cows to increase milk production. So, for example, in one day, the normal cow can produce only 100 ml of milk. And then the genetically modified cow can produce 1,000 ml of milk. So, mas helpful siya, di ba? Kasi instead of meron tayong 100 ml, dahil genetic modified na yung isang organism, pwedeng magkaroon pa tayo ng 1,000 ml. There is an increase of milk production. The next one is the web-producing goats. So spider genes in goats enable the production of spider silk in goat milk. So researchers from the University of Wyoming have developed a way to incorporate spider silk spinning genes into goats. So there are many benefits. So there are many variety of application. For instance, due to its strength and elasticity, spider silk fiber could have several medical uses, such as for making artificial ligaments and tendons, for eye suture, and jaw repair. Diba? Ganun ka high-tech yung technology. Naisip pa nila na si spider pala at saka si goats, yung genes nila, pwede palang mapagsama to produce a genetically modified organism. Diba? So the next one is the GMO concern. So from the example, you have noticed that, wow, ang galing lang ng, ang galing lang ng genetic engineering. Kasi from the undesirable traits to desirable traits, napakalaki po ng tulong. So if there's good effects, meron din namang bad effects. So what are the bad effects? First one is environmental. So possibility of unintended harm to other organisms. So for example, the potential risk of harm to non-target organisms, a pest-resistant crop that produce toxins that may harm both crop-damaging and non-crop damaging insects. Supposed to be hindi dapat butterfly yung mamatay. But since nagdapo siya doon sa BT corn or dun sa corn na genetically modified organism, may possibility na madamay siya. Kahit hindi naman siya yung target, since example siya ng insect, ganon, so mamamatay din siya. Hindi siya good for all the living organism or for all the species. Diba? Imbis na yung bad insects lang, yung pwedeng mamatay, pwede rin yung butterfly. So, yun lang yung medyo masama dito sa genetic engineering. The next one, pesticides become less effective as pests become resistant to modified crops. So, what is the use of pesticide kung kaya na namang mag-adapt ng genetically modified organism to its environment, di ba? So, different varieties and strength of pesticide will be needed once weeds have adapted to the existing effective pesticides. So, for example, ang nasa level 1 pa lang tayo ng pesticide, di ba? Since na-adapt na ni insect or ni pest yung andun sa genetically modified organism, so tataasan pa natin yung level ng pesticide natin para mapatay niya yung pest. So, anong sense nun, di ba? Magiging mas less effective na siya, or di kaya naman, kailangan nating taasan yung dosage. Next one, human health risk. Hindi lang yung ibang insects yung pwedeng madamay, especially pwede rin yung human. So, introducing a gene into a plant may create a new allergen or cause an allergic reaction in susceptible individuals. For example, inserting genes from a nut into another plant could be dangerous for people who are allergic to nuts. So, let's say, for example, an apple. And then, you're going to insert the genes from a nut. And then, I am not aware as human, I am not aware that this apple is genetically modified organism, which is meron siyang nuts. And then, allergy ako sa nuts. So, what will happen to my health? Pwede siyang maapektuhan dun sa human health risk. Next one, economic hazard. So, elimination of competition and the suicide seeds. GM seeds are patented, must buy each year. This presents problem for poor farmers in both the developed and developed worlds. So, what will happen if the farmers are not capable to buy or they are not afford to buy a seed which is yung genetically modified seeds, 'di ba? Another thing, kung ikaw compare mo si GMO and then yung normal organism, some consumer will purchase the genetically modified organism. So what will happen to the crops or to the normal organism? Yung mga ibang farmer, hindi naman nila afford bumili ng GM seeds. So, ano mangyayari dun sa crops nila? Pwedeng hindi yun mabili. So, pwede silang maapektuhan. Plants with sterile seeds that are infertile are created. So farmers are forced to buy seeds every year. So imbis na hindi na nga required, kailangan mo pang bumili ng seeds every year. Kailangan mag-adapt sa changes, no? So though hindi naman lahat kayang mag-adapt sa changes, pero since ito na yung modern technology, sige, mag-adapt tayo. Parang new normal lang sa atin ngayon. So, nabago yung environment, ayan na. So, we need to adapt. Parang kagaya din doon. But if hindi mo pa kayang mag-adapt, so anong mangyayari sa'yo?